Hey there, folks. In the comments section of my original Eldergleam install video, a user requested that I make a tutorial on how to use the Skyrim content validator that I used in that video. Since then, I've converted the auto IT code to .NET and have added additional checks that are important for my own Skyrim installation scenarios. There's a link to the new tool in this video's description, so you too can use it if you want, or not use it if you don't. This video won't cover the full installation of any specific Skyrim mod list, but rather shows how the validator works and how it can increase the likelihood of a successful mod list install in Webajak. There will be two distinct narratives in this video. First, what the app does, followed by a more in-depth look at how it works. Let's start with what the app does. I've already downloaded the Skyrim Content Validator zip from the video's description and extracted it to the desktop. The app is a single exe file, and it requires the Microsoft .NET Desktop Runtime version 9.0.3 or newer. There's a link to the runtime in the description as well. I wanted this app's UI to show me everything I was interested in seeing at the same time, so I didn't design it with a scroll bar. This can cause visibility issues on certain monitors when using a larger than 100% desktop display scaling value. If the UI is cut off, temporarily change your desktop display scaling to 100% to be able to see the full window. Anywhere there is an icon, you can hover over it to see a short description of the underlying functionality. The first thing the app does, assuming it can find your Skyrim install directory, is check if the game's language is set to English in Steam. Large mod lists like Skyrim, Eldergleam, and others require Skyrim Special Edition's language to be set to English, otherwise the mod list install will fail in Webajak. The second check analyzes Skyrim's update setting in Steam. While mod lists don't necessarily care what the game's update method is set to, if Skyrim had an official update in the future, depending on your setup, that update could break your mods. It's always a good idea to configure Skyrim in Steam to wait until I launch the game. Once a mod list is installed, it should be launched through Mod Organizer and not Steam. Launching through Mod Organizer will never trigger a Steam game update in the way that launching through Steam will, so just be aware that by setting the update method to wait until I launch the game, this update configuration should be interpreted as wait until I launch the game through Steam. It's good practice when game modding to not allow Steam to update games automatically. The third check analyzes the system's Pagefile details to ensure it's configured to a common mod list recommended size of 40 GB. The Anniversary Edition content section lists all of the DLC package names, their file names, status, and has controls for validating them. If a mod list requires the paid Anniversary Edition content and you don't have all the files or some of them aren't pristine, the install will fail in Webajak. Bethesda's content distribution mechanics make it more difficult than it should be to validate you have pristine DLC files. The previous iteration of this app simply checked for the presence of these files based on the file names. In this version, I first look to see if each file exists, then generate an MD5 hash for each file, and then compare that hash to a known good hash. Finally, if those two hashes match, I mark the DLC file as passed. If they don't match, I set it to failed. If the file doesn't exist, I set it to file doesn't exist. Anecdotally, I install, delete, and reinstall different mod lists 10 to 20 times a week for testing or to help folks. I've experienced 0 mod list install failures since I've incorporated this new app into my process. Well, failures related to Anniversary Edition DLC files anyway. The Creation Kit section lists all the files that are distributed as part of the Skyrim Special Edition Creation Kit in Steam. The check for these files does purely scan for the presence of files based on their name and correct location in the Skyrim game directory. If the files are present, they are marked as found. If some of the files are missing, they are marked as missing. My process when installing a mod list is to open this app, get all the miscellaneous checks showing a green check mark, make sure all of the paid Anniversary Edition DLC files pass verification, make sure all the Creation Kit files are reporting as present, and then I'll start the mod list install in Webajak. That's the short and sweet of what the app does and how I use it. Now I'm going to transition into a more in-depth explanation of how it works. To demonstrate the process and outcome, I'll fully install Skyrim Special Edition and the Creation Kit from the beginning. When the validator is launched, it performs a lookup in the Windows registry for a value that is written by Steam when Skyrim Special Edition is installed. Since I haven't installed Skyrim yet, this registry key doesn't exist, and the app shows us a warning indicating as much. I'll go ahead and click the Close button to proceed to the main UI. To demonstrate how this works, I'll click the Windows Start button, open the Windows Registry, and navigate to HKey Local Machine, Software, Microsoft, Windows, Current Version, and Uninstall. Each game that Steam installs will have a corresponding subkey created here, which can be identified by the game's Steam ID in the name of each subkey. We won't get far without installing the game, so I'll minimize the registry window and flip back over to Steam, click into my library, enter Skyrim in the search box, click the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim Special Edition, and finally click the Install button. Next, I'll select the D drive for the destination and click the Install button. Once the game is finished installing, I'll click the Store page link under the Play button. At the top of a game's Store page is one of the places you can easily find the Steam ID for each game. Here we can see that Skyrim Special Edition's Steam ID is 489830. Armed with this information, I'll click back over into the registry window, click View, and then click Refresh. After installing the game, we see a new subkey named Steam App 489830. I'll click that key to see its associated key value pairs. One of the values we see is named Install Location, with a data value of the path that Steam installed the game into. This is what the Validator app reads to know if and where Skyrim Special Edition is installed. We're now ready to proceed to the next step. I'll switch back over to the Validator and click the refresh icon. With base Skyrim installed and the registry key present, the install path now populates in the text box and the various scan buttons activate. I'll go ahead and click the scan button for the first time. The first check is to make sure the game is set to the English language in Steam, the second check reads Skyrim's update method in Steam, and the third check analyzes Windows Pagefile settings. At any time I can hover over the icons to see an explanation of why it is or is not a green check. In my case, Skyrim is set to the English language by default, so I don't need to address anything there. The update setting, however, needs some attention. To change Skyrim's update setting, I'll click back over to Steam, navigate back to the library, right-click Skyrim Special Edition, and click Properties. On the General tab is where you can change your game's language setting. If I click into the Updates tab, under Automatic Updates, I'll expand the options and click Wait until I launch the game. This will ensure that as long as I don't launch Skyrim in Steam, the base game will not be modified if there is an official Bethesda update released in the future. With the update method changed, I'll close the Properties window in Steam and minimize the Steam window. Back in the Validator, I'll click the Miscellaneous Checks Scan button again, and the yellow exclamation has changed to a green check. Let me show you where the Validator reads these values from. The Steam library location for Skyrim is D, Steam, Steam Apps, Common, Skyrim Special Edition, which means that the game's corresponding ACF file will be located in D, Steam, Steam Apps. So, I'll double-click this PC on the desktop, navigate into the D drive, Steam, Steam Apps, and finally, I'll double-click appmanifest_489830.acf. The file name of each ACF file contains the Steam ID for the game it holds the configuration options for. The Validator reads two sections in this file. The auto-update behavior flag at the top of the file represents the game's update method setting in Steam. A setting of 0 corresponds to let Steam decide when to update, a setting of 1 corresponds to wait until I launch the game, and a setting of 2 corresponds to immediately download updates. If the Validator detects a setting of 1, then the green check will be shown. If it detects 0 or 2, then the yellow exclamation will be shown. Closer to the bottom of the file, there is another section labeled User Config. Depending on what language Skyrim is set to in Steam, this section will contain a key named Language with a value of the language configuration in Steam. If the Validator detects a language value of English, then it'll show a green check mark. If the language is anything else, it will be a yellow exclamation. That's about all there is to say about the language and update settings, so I'll go ahead and close Sublime. Next, I'll update the system's Pagefile settings. Eldergleam and Lorim, two popular Skyrim mod lists, recommend a page file size of 40 GB. If you'd like, you can check out my Skyrim benchmarking videos for some analysis on actual page file usage. I've put a link in the description to those videos, and there are more to come in the future. To change the page file, I'll right-click this PC on the desktop, click Properties, Advanced System Settings, click the Settings button in the Performance category, click the Advanced tab, and finally click the Change button in the Virtual Memory category. The validator essentially performs two checks on your page file configuration. The first check determines whether the page file is system managed or user managed. If it's system managed, the validator will show a yellow exclamation. If it's user managed, the validator will proceed to check what the maximum page file size is configured for. If it's configured between 1 and 39,999, the yellow exclamation will be displayed. If it's 40,000 or greater, then a green checkmark will be shown. Since the size of the page file is represented in megabytes, 40,000 equates to a page file that is 40 gigabytes in size. Since the validator currently shows a yellow exclamation for the page file, I'll uncheck Automatically Manage Paging File, check the radio button for custom size, enter 20,000 for the minimum size, and 40,000 for the maximum size, and click the Set button. If this is your first time setting these options, you'll probably be asked to reboot your machine for the changes to take effect. I'll close all three windows we've opened to access this menu, click the Scan button in the validator, and now we also have a green checkmark for the page file. Next, I'll perform an initial scan of the Anniversary Edition content by clicking the Scan All Content button. As the individual scan operations are running, I'll scroll the file list to monitor the progress and status. Way back in November of 2021, Bethesda announced that a small number of what are technically Anniversary Edition creations would be made freely available to the folks who had purchased Skyrim Special Edition. Those pieces of content are Fishing, Rare Curios, Saints and Seducers, and Survival Mode. The handful of files that were found during the scan are those that correspond to these 4 pieces of content, which are automatically installed when Skyrim Special Edition is installed in Steam. Of special note is the Rare Curios package, for which I've written a short story about that you can read if you hover over the line entry for the Rare Curios BSA file. Most of the Anniversary Edition content files are not found because I haven't downloaded them yet. To do that, I'll double-click the Skyrim Special Edition link on the desktop, click the OK button on the Detecting Video Hardware modal, and then click OK on the Video Settings modal. Next, I'll click the Play button, wait for the game to reach the main menu, and then click Download when prompted. Skyrim will now download what should be the rest of the Anniversary Edition content. Once finished, I'll click the OK button to update the game's load order. I'll exit Skyrim and return to the desktop. Back in the validator, I'll click the Scan All Content button again to reprocess all of the newly acquired files. As of late, I've had better luck with Skyrim downloading most of the AE files without a lot of hassle. Every so often a file will come through with errors and I'll need to manually reacquire the file through the Creations Club menu. Even Rare Curios has been better lately. In the event I need to manually grab a file, I'll take note of the file name of the package from the validator, navigate to the data directory inside the Skyrim install folder, manually delete the file, reload the game, open the Creations menu, search for the name of the content package, and then download it manually. That's the short and sweet of how to troubleshoot troublesome files. That takes care of the Anniversary Edition files. Next is to install the Creation Kit. I'll switch back over to Steam, click into the library, and search for Creation Kit. If you don't have this item in your library, you'll need to search the Steam store and download it. Depending on the versions of the game you've purchased, you might have an entry for Skyrim Creation Kit, as well as an entry for Skyrim Special Edition Creation Kit. Make sure you are installing the Creation Kit for Special Edition. I'll select that entry in the left pane, and then click the Install button on the right. For the destination, I'll select the D drive, since that's where I put the game, and click the Install button. While it's not necessarily required, I like to set the update method for the Creation Kit to also wait until I launch. Back in the validator, I'll click the Check Creation Kit Files button, and it will search for the presence of each file that is distributed with the Creation Kit. If the files are found, they will be marked as found. And if for some reason a file is missing, it will be marked as missing. In my experience, on fresh installation of the Creation Kit from Steam, encountering missing files has been extraordinarily rare. With the miscellaneous checks green, all of the anniversary content present and accounted for, and the Creation Kit files downloaded, this is the point I normally proceed to a Modlist install in Wabbajack. Bear in mind that it's still possible for a Wabbajack Modlist install to fail for other reasons, but these are the pre-install validations I like to perform. As I mentioned earlier, I reinstall a few dozen Modlists a week on different groups of hardware, and this is the first step in my process that I've used to great success. If you want to use the simple validator, there's a link in the description. If you don't want to use it, that's fine too. Since I am a member of the English-speaking demographic, I've based the coding of this app on the English version of Windows. It's quite possible, likely even, that it wouldn't work properly on a Windows install that was using a language other than English. I hope you've enjoyed this demonstration. Thanks for watching, and out.